Apps that matter. How to get on the techno-savvy gravy train. My name's Elizabeth Hodge, and I'm going to be the presenter for this session at Sloan-C Conference. So to begin with, you can see even on this introductory page, I have several apps showing that are available, and certainly the excitement that surrounds us in all the tools that are available to help us not only as professors but also in assisting our students. So to begin with, actually, I'd like to move on the slide and talk a little bit about what is the purpose of kind of becoming techno-savvy. Certainly one of the things that concerns me most is that in kind of diving into this, that you find that there is a purpose for using apps to either solve a problem or assist your students so that they can take learning to the next level. In doing so, you can see that I've got the Bloom's Revised Taxonomy posted here, and I do this because that's how I tend to categorize the apps that I use in my instruction. But again, I want to point out that it's very important to address your courses individually, your assignments, and truly begin with finding a purpose. Is there a value added for using a particular app and integrating it within a course or an organization, or for using it for yourself or your students? Certainly you want to begin by knowing your audience and what their demographics consist of, certainly understanding their computer literacy skills, meaning if I'm going to develop something and integrate it into my class, I want to make sure that my students, I'm not going to spend half my time being the tech support, that it's actually embedded within the course to support students as a tool for them to use, or a tool for myself to use when I'm developing course content. So to begin with, as I go through the different slides, you're going to see that, as I mentioned, I kind of differentiate the apps based on Bloom's taxonomy. However, in this case, as opposed to reviewing all of the apps that I've included in this presentation, I want to be a little bit more specific about what I do and discuss the benefits of maybe one app per area. Certainly I can explain it more in person when we're at the conference, and I'm happy to share more information about all of the apps. However, in this case, I'd like to be more specific in how I use them and what the benefit is. So to begin with, you can see the first area here is apps for creating. And the one that I will focus on in this area, although they're all beneficial, is the iMovie. And the reason I'm choosing iMovie is because I looked at a particular course that I was teaching, and I thought, what would be a good way for students to develop tutorials that they could share with one another and do peer evaluations? And in this case, using iMovie served that purpose. It's certainly an easy tool to master. You can integrate not only audio and video, screen capture, images, as well as personal video of the person recording, and then it has a very polished effect to it, and students can easily share those. There's lots of options for uploading them, so students can share that and actually do peer evaluations. So the problem that I saw in my course was my students can't purchase Camtasia, which is a wonderful product and something I use quite often, but iMovie provided them a lower cost option for creating movies, and in this case tutorials that they could share with one another and do peer evaluations. This next area is apps for evaluation, and certainly very beneficial for many times for the instructor, let alone for students. And for this focus, I'm selecting VoiceThread. And to give you an example of how this was being used in one of my management classes, it was required that students worked in teams. They had different tools that were available for them to use, but VoiceThread provides that ability for them to record the conversations and share the information with one another so that they could solve the problem within the case, write the paper together, and share their ideas electronically. And so in this case, VoiceThread met those needs for my students. Apps for analyzing is the next area that I'll cover. And in this case, the area that I'm looking at is the Pearl trees. And this is a bookmark links, as it says, on topics and shares collections. What's really unique about this is that you're able to create communities. So for one of my classes, I found one of the requirements was to write a research paper. And oftentimes I found my students, and you might be familiar with this, they tend to wait till the last minute when they're working on a paper, and they don't necessarily work throughout the semester to find those journal articles that they need to help substantiate the material that they put into their paper. So Pearl Trees is a tool that's been very beneficial because I could establish a community amongst my students, and the requirement is that each week of our semester, students were able to actually go into Pearl Trees, search for research articles, and they had to do they had to find 5 articles and do an annotated bibliography on those 5 articles. Now, that in and of itself is wonderful because it established this building block. So each week there would be a topic that was based on their final research paper, and they would literally build 5 resources per week so that by the end of the time they had at minimum 30 or 40 resources, journal articles that they had already written the annotated bibliography to establish and write their research paper. Now, that's just individually. Let's add in the community piece, and if you have 20 students and you've got 40 you've got 800 articles that the students are able to access along with the annotated bibliographies that will assist one another in the research, the articles, and the writing of the paper. So Pearl Trees has truly been a very beneficial app that I've been able to integrate into my course. And it's been beneficial for the students because not only were they working through the material throughout the semester, but then they could share with their classmates and find articles that related to their topics as well. So we really had a large resource for them to tap into. The next area is apps for applying. Now, aside from being a professor in higher education, I've also taught high school, and I also teach teachers how to teach. So the one that I'm going to focus on here is actually tools for students. And the reason I'm doing that is because I think it's essential that at all levels that we provide the supports necessary for our students to learn. So the tools for students, although a very basic program that you might often see used in middle school or high schools, it provides graphic organizers, compare and contrast, and it literally allows, so if you're teaching a lesson face-to-face, let's say, you can go into the tools for students and pull up a particular type of graphic organizer that your students can use as you're lecturing for them to input in so that when they leave the class they have notes that are clear that deal with the information that you were presenting on. And I think it's a great tool also to use for students in terms of homework. So I often share this with many of the teachers that I teach in high school as well as in middle schools. It's been very beneficial not only for them to integrate it in, but also for their students. The next area is apps for understanding, and what's unique about this is I'm actually going to review this Explain Everything. I am actually using Explain Everything for recording this presentation, so it's a great way to, as you can see, screencast and it's got several different editing tools that allow me, as you've seen, to write on the screen, circle things, underline them. I can add text and images, and it provides easy saving and uploading to different formats and different locations. So there's lots of different things that you can do with Explain Everything, and what could be more beneficial if you're creating content for your students than not only presenting it to them, but also providing a means and a way for them to review it when you've completed it. So posting, once I create a tutorial, I can post it within the course management system for students to review over and over again. So it's quite beneficial and a great tool to use. And this last area, apps for remembering, which is our first area when you look at the Bloom's taxonomy, I'd like to go over what would be considered a very simple tool. It's the Photo 365, and again, this kind of points to finding that purpose. And the reason I point that out is because one of the classes I teach is a design class. It's a website design class. And so at the beginning of the course, we talk a lot about design and maintenance, and the students have to assess other websites, looking at the sites for various elements, whether it's marketing and advertising and things like that, as well as design and picking out clarity and contrast and the different design elements. And so the 365 is a great app, and it's very simple, that allows my students to take snapshots and critique them in a very, like I said, a very simple environment, because it'll pop up a calendar and it will show for each day a snapshot that was taken, and the students are then able to add in their comments regarding the designs that they viewed and share them easily with their classmates. So again, for me, it's about finding a purpose. Oftentimes when I attend sessions at a conference, the session turns into, there's this tool and there's this tool and there's this tool, and although that's wonderful and it can be beneficial to build an awareness, I think we have to bring it back to finding a purpose and how we integrate it to meet the needs of our students, and making sure that there's a value added, and that we're not just doing it for the sake of being techno savvy or thinking that it's cool. So hopefully by just focusing on a few, and you've gotten that message and are able to see the value added. And as I'm at the conference, I'll be happy to review any of the other apps that are available, as well as others that I've not included on this presentation that you might be interested in learning more about. So I look forward to meeting you, and hope to see you then.